The meeting is now streaming on YouTube.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tracy. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome. This is the second Cabinet meeting of this month with some important business to transact. Do we have any apologies? I'm not aware of any apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence, Tracy?
There are no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Maisie. We do have intention to hold part of this evening's meeting in private. As always, we don't do that lightly. We consider that's important. And the advice we've been given is that on the basis of commercial sensitivity of some of the information to be considered. So we will at item 8 be excluding the press and public. One of our councillors will also leave at that point reference and interest, which I think he'll declare shortly. I'm not aware of any deputations or public addresses, in which case we will move on to declarations of interest. Any member of the Cabinet have a declaration of interest on any agenda item?
Yeah, item 7 for me. I'm a trustee for Northampton Leisure Trust.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. And I think we've already clarified through discussion that you'll lead the meeting for that one to be discussed. Yeah, thank you. And then Brandon.
Yeah, hi, Chair. Yeah, with regard to item 9, I'm a trustee for 78 Derngate and Royal in Derngate, and as it affects the whole cultural quarter, then I'll leave the meeting or won't attend that part of the meeting.
Yeah, so you'll stay out after the end of the public bit and won't dial in.
Won't dial back in. Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brandon and Anna. So that's declarations of interest. We don't have this evening any issues arising from overview and scrutiny committee. So we'll go to our first report. So this is the impact of COVID-19 on the financial budget. Not a definitive, but starting to flag up the shape of these costs. We have a speaker registered in a moment, Danielle Stone. So we'll go to Brandon first, if you would, Brandon, to talk us through the highlights of this report, and then we'll hear from Councillor Stone. Over to you, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in presenting this paper, I have to remind Cabinet and colleagues and our residents that it's too early to fully understand the financial impact on the Council of the pandemic, both in terms of cost pressures and income losses. However, I felt that it would be helpful to share some of the indicative information to reflect the work we are doing, and that we understand that the budget we set in February of this year may need to change throughout the year. Some of the key service areas that are affected are highlighted in Appendix 1, along with the current assumptions around the scale of impact. Whilst we have received some government funding to support the COVID-19 response, as identified in
Just give Brandon a moment to come back to us if his broadband recovers. Okay, we'll give him just a moment longer. We've just got Ed. Thank you. Ed is kindly calling Brandon just in case there's any issue there. Looks just like his broadband connection, so hopefully he'll be back with us soon.
He's just texted Chair and said he's trying to get back in.
Your support and agreement, we'll just wait a little while for him, shall we?
Hi, Chair. Francis.
Hi, Francis.
Fernandez. If we have a continual problem What I suggest is that maybe the Section 151 officer continues with the presentation while we wait for the council to get back into the meeting.
Yeah, that's not a bad suggestion, Francis. Thank you. I can still actually see Brandon on the screen. I don't know if that means that he's still somehow connected. Let's just give Ed a moment, who was trying to reach him by phone. Perhaps Ed can tell us if he's had any success reaching him.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Eldred is being readmitted into the meeting now.
Ah, great. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, John.
Hello, Brandon. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah,
you changed your device by the look of it.
I've gone to mobile phone, so hopefully I can finish the meeting off. I'll have to take my glass off, otherwise I can't see it.
Yeah.
So
we hadn't. I think the last bit I remember you saying is you felt it would be helpful to share some indicative information. That was roughly it. It was pretty much soon after that we lost you, I'm afraid.
Okay. Yeah. No problem, Chair. I'll start from the beginning then, if that's always indicative. Okay. So I'll start again. In presenting this paper, I have to remind Cabinet colleagues and residents that that it is too early to fully understand the financial impact on the council of the pandemic, both in terms of cost pressures and income loss. However, I felt that it would be helpful to share some of the indicative information to reflect the work we are doing, and that we understand that the budget we set in February this year may change throughout the year. Some of the key service areas that are affected are highlighted in Appendix 1, along with the current assumptions around the scale of impact. Whilst we have received some government funding to support the COVID-19 response, and as identified in Appendix 2, our current assumptions suggest we may have a gap in this year between 2 and 3 million, which is in paragraph 4.2.2, if we do not receive any further funding. We do carry reserves to smooth out unknown pressures. However, our usable general fund reserve sits at 4 million. If we do not receive further funding support, we may have to consider making some cost savings in year or utilise some earmarked reserves, which may impact some of the planned schemes. To that end of the recommendation states the preferred option at paragraph 3.3.1 is option C, to task the CEO and Management Board to review the budget for 2020-21 and provide options for Cabinet to consider at the July Cabinet. Given the amount of uncertainty around costs and income, and that this paper seeks to provide some information to make councillors aware of the challenges, I propose that any questions on specific areas areas be recorded here or emailed to me, and I will ask the CEO and CFO to consider them and either respond directly to produce a simple Q&A for further for councillors for the July Cabinet. So on that, Chair, I'd like to recommend recommendation in 2.1 to 2.3.
Thank you very much indeed, Brandon. Okay. We'll take, if we may, then our speaker registered on this item is Danielle Stone. Councillor Stone. Danielle, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair and Leader. And I'm sorry my video is not working. I really did want to comment on this item. First of all, I wanted to say a big thank you to all the officers and all the staff that have been involved in looking after everybody during the pandemic, and to the finance officers for helping with the finances. I think we're in a really, really difficult situation. We were promised right at the beginning of the pandemic that the government would be picking up the tab, and it has been a shock to everybody to find that actually they're not going to do that, and we're living in very uncertain times. So not only are we incurring a lot more costs, we are losing a lot of income as well. And the biggest worry for me is that at the same time, a lot of our households, a lot of our residents, a lot of our children are becoming ever more vulnerable, and that's going to make cutting frontline services really problematic. And I am sure everybody in the Cabinet, as well as everybody in the Council, would want to avoid that if at all possible. I'm really appreciative of the updates that I've been receiving from the CEO and from the Leader of the Council. It's been extremely helpful, and I think it's important in terms of the fact that we are in this really difficult situation, and there are now emergency powers, which means we could be in a situation where there is no accountability. I'm quite reassured that the leaders and the officers at the borough are as determined as anybody, as I would be, to make sure there is a level of accountability still there. And I would like that to go one step further. So my question to you this evening is, in these very difficult times with all the juggling that we need to do around the finances, do you not think it's time that we had a separate finance scrutiny group so that we can properly understand and interrogate what is going on, and indeed maybe bring forward suggestions for how to cope with the situation we're in?
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Stone. Thank you for your kind comments on updates and so on. We prefer to do things openly and publicly, and so we're glad to be back to a form of public meeting and so on. I'm going to ask Brandon, first of all, if he wants to come back on any of the points that were raised. I might have a couple of comments to chip in after that then, certainly reference to finance scrutiny. Brandon, anything you wanted to pick up there from what Councillor Stone?
No, I mean, obviously, again, I appreciate everything Councillor Stone just said about it, thanking the staff and everybody, because they've been fantastic. You know, they've been working 7 days a week to make sure the money all the grants get paid out, make sure the business rates have been reduced to zero. You know, in total, 64 million has been put back into our local economy via that. So that's a good news story for us, and to make sure the businesses are sort of well looked after. Oh, battery's going. Yeah, just to make sure the companies are all well looked after, or looked after to a certain degree, and obviously people that are out of work as well with the furlough payments. So there's a lot of good work going on there, and the officers have been absolutely first class. You know, we can't fault them. They've been so dedicated to make sure Northampton keeps running. But you know, maybe something to take up with Councillor Lane as chairman of scrutiny with regard to the finance, and get something in there, and see if we can do a Zoom meeting with that one as well, or if we're able actually bring it back into council and do it over the tables. So, you know, I'd be more than happy to sit there and listen to what everybody's ideas are, and how everybody in the whole council can help, not just certain areas. Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, and I think I'd feel the same. This is about awareness. We wanted to get an update, although it's hard to pin the numbers down, so it's quite broad. And I think we'll want that on a very regular basis. And of course, increasingly, the numbers will start to look a little bit clearer, a little bit firmer. So I certainly think we should be seeking, and I know that the Head of Finance would want to bring us continual updates as this picture becomes clearer. That will be coming either to Cabinet, as it has this evening. Of course, Audit Committee has the opportunity to look, and as indeed does Overview and Scrutiny. But I'm fairly certain that we can promise you something like a monthly update as these costs emerge, because they're going to be so significant to the impact on our budget that we will want to keep monitoring them. And then if as part of that we want a separate meeting and discussion beyond the formality of the Cabinet meeting, where we can chat and ask questions of the Head of Finance or other officers, I'll be happy to have that too, sort of cross-party sort of discussion to look over it more. So I think rather than separate finance scrutiny, although Overview and Scrutiny are free to do what they want as our Audit Committee, we can assure you of it coming to Cabinet, and then very happy to have separate discussions where we sit down cross-party and discuss the emerging picture as well, so that we're all clear. Yeah, definitely. Does anybody else want to make a comment at all? So this has affected all of our areas, of course. Anybody else want to make a particular comment? May I also echo Councillor Stone's words on how well our officers have performed? Of course, we'll say a little more about that perhaps shortly, but at a sort of departmental level, anybody want to say anything about how their particular budget has worked in their area, any of the portfolio holders?
Just very briefly, Chairman, if I could, just to add that the budget, it's not really a comment on the budget area, it's more a comment on the way that the refuse service has behaved. And it was a long few weeks ago now that I was asked to participate in a clap for the bin drivers on Radio Northampton, which I gleefully did. We've only actually lost 5 individual rounds, which were food rounds, during the whole process, which is actually a way better performance than loads and loads of other councils. So we've done extremely well. And since it was so many weeks ago that I did that clap on Radio Northampton. It's worth reminding us that bin drivers and people collecting the waste are key workers as well. And they've been working tremendously hard, especially in the back as well, to make sure the service seems normal as it does. So well done to them.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. We wholeheartedly agree with that. They've done a fantastic job. And just to clarify, when you say 5 rounds, that's not 5 areas that haven't had their rubbish collected. That there have been 5 specific daily collections of food that haven't been covered, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. It's not 5 days, it's 5 individual areas that had problems that we couldn't fulfill on 5 particular days. After all of this, collections 5 days a week for over 10 weeks now. So it's a very, very low percentage.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Annie, you had your hand up there. You were going to make some comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo everybody's thanks to all the officers. They're working in completely different ways to their normal responsible duties. So most of my team are now on the Community Resilience Forum. So they've been assisting with the phone calls that have been coming in for direct support for COVID, and then liaising, getting them out to community groups. Also licensing, seeing a completely different change as well. So we've been looking at more food licenses and supporting businesses with guidance around that, and also all the ordering of their PPE equipment as well. Our officers have been responsible to. So I think they've gone above and beyond, and extremely proud of them all. Just like it noted that I give a massive thank you for all the hard work they've given us over this difficult period.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Thank you indeed. Stephen, I think you were next with a comment. Tim, I've got, and then James. Thank you.
I've spoken before at the last cabinet meeting about how successful the hotel initiative has been in persuading some of the guests to actually finally want to address their issues and move on into other accommodation. And we are still lobbying the government to get that extra funding to try and support Move On to fund the initiatives to get them out of the hotels rather than back onto the streets.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I mean, the tremendous lessons learned and strides made in dealing, as you say, with the homeless. And we will continue to lobby hard. All councils have spent and making sure that we recover the money. So like all councils, we've submitted a return to the government to make it clear what our ongoing costs of this have been. So we'll continue to fight that, to recover what we can. Tim, I think you were next. Thank you. You're still on mute, Tim, I think.
Are we there?
I think we've got you now. Yes, we have.
We've taken a big hit on car park income. That is income that has gone. And at some stage, we're obviously going to have to reinstate charging, but that's going to leave a big hole over the year. Not only have we lost income, of course, all the costs keep going. So it's something of a double whammy there. As far as our commercial property portfolio is concerned, that's pretty varied. And that I think is going to be a good thing, and that should be pretty resilient. So hopefully that income will stay up. Just one final thing, could I just preach caution against setting up a new scrutiny group, because any formal group means officer time, and all the officer corps are working their socks off at the moment, and putting any extra load on them, I think, should be resisted unless it's an absolute necessity. So I think we should really lay off them in providing them with any more work.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I think you're right on that, but that's not to not give us access to that information. We're keen to continue to monitor, and I think probably this will be the forum to bring those regular updates to. But that doesn't prevent any informal discussion at any time. Queries direct to officers from opposition leaders or you know, from anybody, any party, or for us to have a formal discussion as they emerge. We're very keen to get the earliest answer we possibly can on the clear cost of what the coronavirus has been. James, I think you had your hand up as well. You're going to make a comment on planning related matters.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a few bits on planning. So for the most part, the service remains quite busy. We have seen a drop in larger applications. This is mainly probably due to the new way of working as developers try and figure all that out. There have been granted some new planning changes regarding operational hours to enable things like more social distancing and that sort of stuff. But we do anticipate there will be a fall at the end of the year in terms of where we were last year in the revenue we take in, so that there will be an impact. Obviously, at the moment, we're still monitoring that closely. And as you said, Chair, I'd like to echo your words regarding the officers and how well they've carried on during these circumstances. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, James. We'd all agree with you on that. So, on the corporate side, it's been quite interesting to see how incredibly quickly we were able to get people out the Guildhall and working from home, yet can continue services. One of the key part of that has been the IT support, and I think that's really worthy of mention. All of our own staff and our IT partners who've managed to make that happen. Whilst fairly big money involved, actually it's quite innovative the way they've kept those costs down. So I think that's that's absolutely to be recognised. The way in which services have continued with people suddenly working at home has been extraordinary, really. Safety of staff, councillors, customers and so on is paramount. But I know there's innovations going into to make the one-stop shop able to open as soon as possible with screens and so on. So all of that that's going on is absolutely tremendous. And I do know that the theme of keeping good value has remained throughout that whole period, really. So whilst there's huge costs, unbudgeted costs, nightmare, nevertheless, I think the way in which we've kept the prudence and careful sort of expenditure around that has been fantastic. Couple that with the tremendous work effort that everybody's put in. I think we're all extremely grateful for that across all departments.
Definitely.
Any further comments on this? I haven't seen any more hands, I don't think. Anybody else want to chip in? Any further comments?
No, just to say a big thank you to the councillors as well for not, letting the staff actually get on and do their job rather than interrupting issues when this has been a massive issue for everybody, and letting the staff get on with their jobs, but also to thank them as well for not bearing with us as well, because it's been a difficult time for all of us to get these grants out on time and within a time scale. And there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and the public have been absolutely fantastic in, not complaining and sticking with us and helping us through this difficult part. So just to put that on record as well, please, Chair.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, quite right too. Quite right. Okay, if there's no further comments at all to make on that, I'll just remind you, as Brandon has told us, of the recommendations, which as always are at section 2 of that report. Can I just ask you to indicate your agreement to those recommendations, please? Agreed. Thank you very much. Seeing a nod or a thumbs up from just about everybody there. That's great. That takes us on to item 7. This is capital investment in plant and machinery. Tim is going to talk this through. I think we should have seen by now then that, yes, Anna, having declared an interest, has now left the meeting. So, Tim, over to you. Again, one speaker registered, that's Councillor Stone. So over to you initially, Tim, just to talk us through the highlights of the report. Oh, mute again, Tim, I think.
I don't think I've ever spent so much time talking to myself. Could I first off just mention that the whole of this item is now on the public agenda, although the private agenda did include an appendix. That's no longer the case, and we have the whole report in public. Yep. This is to update the plant and machinery and repair it as necessary in our portfolio of 3 leisure centres, which vary in age from the 1930s through to the 1980s, and include a listed building. The Leisure Trust was set up in 2011 and has been a rip-roaring success, I think, in providing affordable leisure and health facilities right across the town, and also, just as important, relieving the borough council budget. I mean, Councillor Larratt and those of us that generation will remember how much these centres used to cost us every single year. It's now on a very sound footing, obviously going through a bad time with the close down. And it's most important that we should give the Leisure Trust the best opportunity to regenerate and prosper when we get back online. We also need to make sure that these investments are in good order for the future, not only of the trust, but also for the town as a whole. So this report sets out the reasoning for providing a budget allocation of £1.8 million to replace plant and machinery at the 3 leisure centres. The only caveat to that, I think, is that in the case of Lings, that will ultimately be redeveloped. And so any investment that's made in the Lings property will obviously take into account the life of the investment and the value for money aspect. But as far as everything else is concerned, what we're looking for is new plant, which will reduce operating costs, will also reduce the carbon footprint of the various leisure centres, and they are very energy hungry places. And so it's good for the town, good for the future, and good for everybody. And also good for the future West Northamptonshire Council, which will find 3 prosperous leisure centres in very good order to serve the majority of the population of West Northamptonshire. The recommendations are set out at 2.1 through to 2.1.4, and I commend them to the Cabinet.
Very good. Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much indeed. We'll go to our one speaker, Councillor Stone, if we may. Danielle, over to you again.
Thank you very much. I'm really in favour of the propositions in this report. I think the Trilogy Trust has done the most amazing job. I was a director on the board for a while, and I could see their commitment to our communities and to the most disadvantaged people in our communities, offering them services wherever they could. And I think it's been, for me as a councillor in my ward, it's been an absolute boon to be able to signpost people towards Trilogy. And indeed, I've run specific projects with them for very disadvantaged people, and they've always been amazingly supportive of the ideas I've taken to them. So I think they are a really important facet of our town, and their assets are really important assets for our town. So I'm really pleased to see we're going to have some major investment. My question though is, when I did a trawl a little while ago, about 6 months ago, of grants that were available to local authorities, I was amazed at how many there were and how many were not being applied for, either by this local authority or indeed by the county. So I suppose my question is, do we have the capacity to monitor all those opportunities, and do we have the capacity to take advantage of them? I don't know if there is a current grant that would be available for this particular purpose, but I do know that when I was looking at stuff 6 months, 9 months ago, there certainly were.
Okay. Thank you very much, Danielle. Not sure who may be best placed to answer that specific question. Is there anything you wanted to say, Tim, or it might be that I should ask perhaps Marion? I don't know if you're in a position to be able to say anything on that grant.
Well, I think we've got a two-pronged approach here, because our officers in general are very switched on with all grants that are available. I well remember a previous chief executive saying our job is to make sure that if a tap's dripping somewhere, our bucket is underneath it. And I think that sort of philosophy has continued. And so we're always looking for finance opportunities. We've also got the experts here, really, with the Leisure Trust, who are always looking for development opportunities, which includes grant opportunities and things like that. So I would have thought we're pretty well covered, but if anyone knows better than me, I'd be pleased to hear from them.
Thank you, Tim. Do you want to make any further comments on that? No, okay. In which case, I'll just add to Councillor Stone's comments and Cabinet's comments really about success of the Leisure Trust. I've less experience than people like Tim and Phil of it, but there's little doubt at all they've enhanced the offer greatly. So as a customer paying or subscription, you get a better quality offer, and it's an excellent value for money. And I think the town gets better as well with the community activities. One of my things I'm tremendously proud of is I told some colleagues I had a letter from my own doctor telling I was old enough for a medical, and they offer the Trilogy centres as an alternative to your own doctor's surgery. And somehow that just seemed to me something really special to be central to that health agenda. That contribution I think is absolutely fantastic. And so if I direct your attention back to the recommendations at item 2.
Sorry.
It says, did you want to come in there, Brandon?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was just to put on record, thanks to Ian Redfern, the managing director. He's retiring in a couple of weeks. I don't think we'll have another meeting before then to actually thank, for all the hard work he's put into the Trilogy. I've known him for 15 years now when I first got onto the council back in 2003, and he's been always dedicated to Northampton Borough and what he's done to Trilogy and make it work, and make it a fantastic facility for the whole of Northampton people. And just want to make sure on record that our thanks go to him, and wish him all the best for the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Brandon. Skipped my mind, but I would have regretted not having marked that. Ian has done a splendid job, hasn't he? Absolutely fantastic, and we wish him really, really well in his retirement. We thank him for everything he's done during his time at the Leisure Trust of the Borough. Absolutely, thank you. So to direct your attention back to the recommendations, which are item 2, can I just ask you to indicate your agreement, please, to the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. So that was item 7. So we now, as item 8, we're going to exclude, please, if we may, the press and the public to go into our private agenda. So we have those of us who are rejoining that. Brandon won't be coming back into that. Brandon's going to let Anna know that she can now rejoin the meeting, and we have a separate link, I think, to join that meeting, haven't we? The private meeting. Okay, so as we won't be recording that on YouTube, I'll just thank everybody.